guys, it's Kesara, and today we're going to be talking about the best book that I have read in 2024. So unlike in some of my previous years, I did not actually read that many books this year, so I have limited myself to 5 books per these end of the year videos. But in this one, I just read a few books in the last, I want to say 2 to 3 weeks that are just new favorites of mine. So I had to include 2 of them. I couldn't choose between 2 of them, so I had to include both of them. So this video, we will be doing my top 6 books that I read in 2024. So the first book that I want to talk about in this video is The Atlas 6 by Olivie Blake. So this is one of the first books that I read this year. I read it back in January. I ended up loving it so much more than I expected. A lot of people were giving these books really good reviews, so I decided to pick it up. I was in kind of a reading slump at the time, so I wasn't really expecting much from it, but I ended up loving it so much. I listened to the audiobooks for these, and it's following kind of 6 different characters who are invited to join this secret society. I think it's the Alexandria Society or something like that, and they each have different magical abilities, and 5 people kind of enter this 1-year training period to enter the society. Sorry, 5? Did I say 5? I meant 6 people enter this training period, the Atlas 6, hence why it's named that, but only 5 people will actually be accepted into the society. I just loved the dark academia vibes. I loved learning about each of the individual characters. It's very character driven in a good way, and I also really like the atmosphere of this. I think it was just really well written. The magic was written well, the school was written well, and just the plot itself overall was complex and interesting, and I loved everything about these books. I definitely will be rereading them in the future. I think I want to physically read them now, but I feel like I'll end up loving them even more if I can read the physical books. So that's definitely on my wish list for Christmas, because this definitely ended up being one of my favorite series this year, and I wasn't expecting anything from them. So the next book I want to talk about is Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This book is a wild ride. So this is a hard sci-fi, and the only sci-fi that I have in my top books of the year. I haven't read that much sci-fi this year, but this one definitely blew me away. I listened to the audiobook of this one, and it starts off in the very distant future when humanity has basically conquered other star systems and stuff like that. We're a galactic empire, and we're following this research team that is trying to create another evolution of humanity on another planet, but they kind of crash land into the planet, and then we switch to many decades and centuries into the future from there, and the last remnants of humanity have left Earth and are looking for a place to live. And then we also have the remnants of this experiment, which are giant talking spiders that are also in the mix here, where there's conflict between the two, and it's just interesting and so refreshing to get something just so different and out there but written so well. I really loved following the spider colony. They were so different than humans, but at the same time they were intelligent and complex, and they had an interesting social structure, but their social structure was based off of their biology and how their biology is different than our biology, and that actually plays a role in the plot of the story. It was all just so woven together in an interesting way, and it was just so much fun to read. I absolutely cannot wait to continue on with the series. This was definitely one of my favorite books of the year, and I ended up giving it 5 stars. So the next book that I have to talk about is The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown. I recently did a full review on this one because I absolutely loved it. I definitely considered putting this on my most surprising reads of the year, because this definitely surprised me. I didn't expect this to be a 5-star book or to make it to my top 5 or top 6 books of the year. I ended up loving this so much, and it was just so good that it had to be more than just a surprising book to me, because it was just everything that I could have possibly wanted in a book. It has all of the tropes that I want and love. It was beautifully atmospheric. I loved these characters. I loved watching their journey, and I loved everything about this book. So this is following a character named Cassie Andrews who works in a bookstore, and yes, I do realize books like this that have books that are important and people who work in bookstores and things like that are tailored to readers, but I feel this one was just done really well as being tailored to readers. And she has this old man who is friends with her that visits the bookstore often. Well, he dies at the very beginning, and he leaves her a book which is called The Book of Doors. She's messing around with her friend, and they accidentally open the apartment door, and outside the apartment door, instead of the hallway, is the streets of Venice. So this book can turn any door into every door, or every door into any door. Either way, I think it works. But it's just so well done. There is a teensy bit of like a romance like hidden in the background. I wish there was like a little bit more of that because it's not really gone through in this book, but otherwise I loved every second of this. I don't want to give too much about it because I think part of the reason why I ended up loving this so much is that I wasn't expecting it to be that good, and then it just surprised me so much. So I absolutely love this. I ended up giving it 5 stars. The next book I want to talk about is Babble by R.F. Kuang. So this book is one that I finished very recently. I did not expect to love this as much as I did. I think part of it was just like her previous series was a high fantasy series, which I loved. I love high fantasy so much. So being that this one wasn't so much high fantasy, like it's set in our world, just like in a like alternate history. So it's like a historical fantasy, but it's like an alternate history historical fantasy because it's set in England in like the early 1800s during like the height of the British Empire. And we're following characters in Babel Tower, which is a fictional tower within the College of Oxford, where we have like immigrant who are being brought in from like other countries because they're fluent in their like homelands, and that is actually really important to the magic system of this world, which is silver. But like when you write translated words onto the silver, like it can do different things. But I think what really worked for me is like just the thematic elements. I honestly didn't care necessarily for the magic side of this book so much. It was really more the historical like alternate history side of this that I found incredibly interesting, because it does go into like some deeper topics about racism and like abolition during that era, and then also like the opium trade with China and things like that I found incredibly interesting and incredibly moving, and I really ended up loving this book because of that. So I ended up giving this one 5 stars as well. Next we have The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. So this is the first book in a new series. I don't know if it's a duology or a trilogy. It's a murder mystery set in a fantasy world, which I absolutely love. You don't get too much of the fantasy world, but you get enough that you know there's more of a fantasy world there, and it just makes me want to read the next book in the series, which I did get. I got an ARC copy of it, and I'm super excited to get to it, probably starting in January. And this one really did surprise me. We're following assistant to the investigator, and the assistant is kind of like, he kind of reminds me a little bit of like a computer, in like he's kind of like programmed a certain way through magic, where like if he smells like certain scents, he can like have like an eidetic memory to what he witnesses when he smells that scent again. So like he's going out and observing and then coming back and giving her all of the information, and there's just a lot that goes on here. There's definitely a lot of politics, not as much in this one I think as there will be in later ones, because this one very much heavy murder mystery plot, but I still ended up really liking this. And I think like the main reason for that is just I wanted more from the fantasy world, but I think that's kind of the point, is that you don't get that much from the fantasy world in this one. And as long as in the later books we get more of that world, I think I'm gonna end up really loving this series. So I'm so excited to read the next book in the series, and hopefully I'll end up loving that one even more than I did this one. And the last book that I want to talk about, and my favorite book that I've read this year, is The Will of the Many by James Islington. So this is a book that I picked up back in January, and I finished it at the very beginning of February. I love this book so much that I ended up going on like a total reading slump after this. It gave me a book hangover because I love this book so much. This is a Roman inspired fantasy, which has like a hierarchical system. Like the series name is Hierarchy, and this is the first book in the series, so it kind of makes sense. The way the magic works is like people in like the lowest level of the hierarchy will be like giving their like half of their energy to the next level up. So the person at the next level up will have like the energy of like 10 people, but they have to give half of their energy to the person in the third level, and so on and so forth until we get to the person who basically has the most power of them all. We're following a character named Viz, who is kind of going into like this academy to learn not necessarily magic, but kind of like all of the things that they're gonna need in order to have that magic. I think what worked the best for me in this is just the world building and how interesting and unique it felt, but also there is like a really good plot here as well. I loved like pretty much everything about this book. This like gave me the same feeling as like way back in the day when I first picked up high fantasy and ended up loving it so much. I got that feeling again with this book. It brought me back. It was just so nostalgic to get that feeling again. And like, honestly, this is one of the reasons that I probably started my channel back again, because I want to get back into more books like this. I'm so happy to have picked it up. I definitely considered rereading it. It's been like 11 months now since I've read this, but I think I'm gonna wait to reread it until the next book comes out. And I'm so excited for that because it's coming out next year, and I'm so excited to continue on with the series. By the way, I did end up giving this one 5 stars as well. So that's all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up to support my channel. I have a ton of videos planned for the next few months, so please consider subscribing and let me know in the comments what were some of the best books you read this year. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!